The Vancouver Whitecaps face Chivas USA on Sunday. Manchester United take on Liverpool, and Tottenham Hotspur host a North London derby against Arsenal. It's going to be a huge Sunday, and we'll preview it right here on Soccer Talk, plus all the latest from today, including a look back at Toronto's big win against Seattle to open their Major League Soccer season, including a big game from Jermaine Defoe. Good evening and welcome to Soccer Talk here on AM 650 Radio in Vancouver. My name's Tyler Green. You can follow me on Twitter, Tyler Green FC, also online, tylergreen.org. Soccer Talk available online via a webcast and live streaming, www.am650radio.com. Thank you for listening to us live, or whether that's on podcast. Now, Vancouver, the Whitecaps are already in LA as they face a Chivas USA team on Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock. The Caps are coming off a huge victory against the New York Red Bulls, but again, this was a little bit of a New York side that was without Thierry Henry, without defender Jamison Olave. It was also a jet-lagged Tim Cahill. So there are some things that the Whitecaps need to solidify in order to make sure that they are a top team. And Chivas, well, they're coming off a big victory of their own against Chicago, a 3-2 win. We're going to preview that match, get all the latest from the Whitecaps, and hear from head coach Carl Robinson. Midfielders Russell Tybert, defender Jordan Harvey, as well as Nigel Rio-Coker. And assistant coach Martin Pert will join us at 11:30 this evening to talk about his role, his experience, his translation skills. We'll also get more on the match in the starting 11, which is coming up in just a few minutes' time. Before we get too far into the show, I want to welcome Kia Vancouver to the program, online at kiavancouver.com. Buy any new 2013 or 2014 new in stock Kia and receive 0% financing and a 5-year 100,000-kilometer bumper-to-bumper warranty, as well as Kia Vancouver's exclusive Spring Savings New Car Buyers Package. The total value is over $2,500 at absolutely no charge to you, the consumer. Offer expires Thursday, March 20th. Do not miss out. Details in store at Kia Vancouver, 396 Southwest Marine Drive, or online at kiavancouver.com. Now, there's a few ways you can connect to us here on the show. We're on Twitter at SoccerTalk650, or as mentioned, my Twitter account, Tyler Green FC. You can check out our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/SoccerTalkVan. We have a few announcements and content coming up on our Facebook page, so make sure that you check it out and it'll keep you informed. We also have a contest running right now with our Fantasy Premier League. You might want to join that. It's one. If you're the big winner at the very end, you're going to get a great prize pack from Umbro. But we have monthly prizes as well. Currently, for the month of March, you have the best team name, you're going to win that prize. Other ones coming up, most improved side, maybe even the team that gets the fewest points over a month is going to win a prize. Who knows? We're going to come up with that over the next little while. You can also comment on our barber poll on our Facebook page. And it's something like this today. After seeing the Whitecaps win their first match of the season last weekend against the New York Red Bulls in convincing fashion, a 4-1 victory, how do you think the Caps will fare in MLS this season? There's a bunch of options for you. Are the Whitecaps, was that just a blip? Are they going to miss the playoffs? Are they going to squeak into the playoffs? Are they going to make the playoffs comfortably? Are they going to win the Supporters' Shield? Are they going to win MLS Cup? Or perhaps they're going to win everything. Tweet us your thoughts with the hashtag BarberPoll on Twitter, SoccerTalk650 or Tyler Green FC. You can also email us, SoccerTalk650@gmail.com. Call into the program at 604-280-0650, or you can vote. Just simply vote at tylergreen.org. The Barber Poll, brought to you by AnotherFineCut.com. Get the authentic straight razor experience that reminds you you're alive. 3 locations, Gastown, Yaletown, and the Financial District. Online at anotherfinecut.com. Coming up in the first half of the program, we dive into the starting 11. We'll also hear from the Whitecaps, as mentioned. The first half is brought to you by BC Soccer, online at bcsoccer.net. Follow them on Twitter and Instagram at 1BC Soccer, and participate in their weekly contests and learn more about what's happening in soccer across the province. In the second half of the program, we'll check in with our injury expert. On the injury report, David Sandals from Expert Physio, expertphysio.ca. Carl Robinson has spoken about not rushing designated player Pedro Morales into the starting lineup, as he's going to need Morales for the season. And it's a long soccer season here for the Whitecaps. So we'll talk about that with our physio expert David Sandals and just figure out exactly how long before we might see Pedro Morales in tip-top form. Is jet lag still a factor for him a week later, or should he be fine and should he be good to go? Joining the Soccer Talk Roundtable tonight is Colin Elms. Colin is the managing director of the Total Soccer Systems Academy, TSS Academy in Richmond, tssacademy.com, and you can follow Colin on Twitter at Colin Elms. Colin is very opinionated, to say the least, when it comes to the development of Canadian players with the Canadian national team. And something that we're going to talk to Colin about is just the lack of British Columbians on some of those national team rosters. So that's coming up in the second half of the program, just after 11 o'clock tonight. And as always, we'll close the program out with the manager's rant and finish with the final cut, brought to you by anotherfinecut.com. Once again, you're listening to Soccer Talk on AM 650 Radio in Vancouver, online, am650radio.com. My name's Tyler Green, with Miller, Maddox, Morales, Tybert, Fernandez, all ready to play. One of those players will likely be left on the sidelines and out of the starting 11. Who will it be? Soccer Talk contributor Simon Fudge and I debate that next in the starting 11. You're listening to Soccer Talk right here on AM 650. This is Soccer Talk on AM 650. Again, my name's Tyler Green. Follow the show on Twitter, Soccer Talk 650 or Tyler Green FC. Still to come in the first half of Soccer Talk, brought to you by bcsoccer.net. We'll hear from Whitecaps head coach Carl Robinson, as well as Whitecaps assistant Martin Pert will preview the Caps in Los Angeles to face Chivas USA Sunday at 4 o'clock for that one. Joining us live at 10:30 is Martin Pert, so stay tuned for that. Colin Elms joins us on Soccer Talk on the Roundtable. That's in the second half of the program. But right now, it is time for the starting 11 with Soccer Talk contributor Simon Fudge. Simon Fudge 74 on Twitter. And number one on the starting 11, Bayern Munich head coach Pep Guardiola fails to shake Arsene Wenger's hand after beating his Arsenal side in Champions League. Is this being overblown, Simon?
I think the incident itself has been overblown, but it's an interesting one in which it shows just how Wenger himself has a real bad habit of being a sore loser. And the fact that he refused to shake Pep Guardiola's hand in both legs of this tie in the Champions League that they had with Bayern Munich probably speaks a little bit more to that. There have been previous incidences where Wenger has had some experiences with managers. Alan Pardew, for one, he confronted him many years ago in a Premier League game when Pardew was West Ham boss. It's funny because Wenger even stated, read something today that he'd stated he doesn't have much for formalities pre-game or post-game. So the fact that he doesn't shake a manager's hand doesn't really bother him all that much. But in a lot of ways, I don't think it speaks that much to any potential bad feelings that he would have with Guardiola.
Yeah, you know what? It is being kind of overblown. I think it happens so often. People probably have already forgotten about it. Best revenge, if he's upset that, they didn't shake hands, hey, beat him next time in Champions League. It's really that simple. It's probably not going to happen for a while, though, unfortunately, for Arsenal. So, for me, it's being overblown.
I agree. 2, how do you line up the front four for the Whitecaps game against Chivas USA on Sunday?
Well, I think Vancouver, the Whitecaps are probably going to sit with that same starting 11 that they had last week, which means you have Darren Maddox up front with Miller in behind him, Russell Tybert and Sebastian Fernandez playing the rest of that. I think Pedro Morales is going to come on as a sub. And I think it basically falls to that point of if you sit Maddox, you could potentially lose him for who knows how many games just with the attitude. If you sit Miller after 2 goals, well, that'll probably just piss him off. So I think you're going to see the same kind of lineup. And probably the Whitecaps and Carl Robinson are going to hope for the same sort of result.
I agree. I think they'll go unchanged with Miller and Maddox being sort of at the front, Fernandez and Tybert playing in that wide area. You want to get Morales in there somehow, but I think just based on the way that the team and that starting 11 played last week and how well they were, it's probably in Carl Robinson's best interest to stick with that starting 11 and show faith in them to go out and get a result tomorrow against the Goats.
Number 3 in the starting 11 after seeing the Whitecaps win their first match of the season. How do you think the Caps will fare in Major League Soccer this year?
Still think they'll be in a battle for a playoff spot in the West. But it's interesting because I look at how talented this team is. If they can find a real level of consistency, would it be out of the realms to rule out them finishing in the top 3 or even in 3rd place? It would be their highest finish they'd ever have in MLS. A chance to play in a 2-leg tie and get a home playoff game for the first time ever as an MLS club. I think the one thing that they will provide is be more of a challenger for the Amway Canadian Championship this year than initially thought. Probably before the new signings came in and the season started in last week's game, probably looked at Vancouver as being a 3rd favorite for the Voyageurs Cup, and I think now they're 2nd favorite, especially after Montreal losing again tonight, but also seeing how impressive TFC looked today in Seattle. I think there are possibilities here of it being good, but I still think it's going to be a bit of a challenge.
Well, I changed my mind after preseason and said they would squeak into the playoffs, and I think after the first game, I'm going to stick with that prediction, although I do think that they really do have that potential to really kick the door down in the West. But tomorrow, for me, is going to be a better indicator of who they are because it's a road game, because it's a Chivas team that is going to put out their strongest lineup, not like New York, who sat Thierry Henry, who didn't have Jamison Olave in the lineup, two key players for that team. So I think that's going to do it. And the one thing I'm going to look at with the Whitecaps is the Whitecaps, they had a 4-goal cushion, and they let in that one goal. Well, if you're just leading by one in future games, that is going to end up biting the Whitecaps in the butt. And for me, they really need to show me what they can do tomorrow. And tomorrow, I think, is going to be that better indicator. As for that question, you can weigh in on our poll question right now, which is that how do you think the Whitecaps are going to fare in Major League Soccer this season? You can check it out at tylergreen.org and vote online for that, or you can tweet us at Soccer Talk 650.
Number 4 is the Champions League match between Manchester United versus Olympiacos, a make-or-break match in United's season.
Well, it has to be. United's last chance for a trophy, really. And if they don't have a shot at the league title without Champions League and winning it, they could even be without Europe next year. So this, I think, is a huge make or break time for their season. They need to come out, and they need to come out strong and show that they can win. And they've got a big deficit, 2 goals down. They need to come back and win that. It's a huge part of their season right now.
Totally agree. With the fact that they're just basically out of everything domestically, struggling to even be in a position to be in Europe next year. Wednesday night at Old Trafford's a big, big game. And if they don't get the job done, it'll be very interesting to see just how much more pressure gets applied on David Moyes and the club itself in terms of what needs to be done and how things need to change there.
Number 5 on the starting 11 out of Champions League, sitting 10th in Serie A, is AC Milan in crisis.
Well, it's amazing because I think any big club that doesn't perform well in Italy, it's always considered a crisis there. There's no question the Rossoneri have been on a downturn. They obviously changed the manager. Allegri left and Clarence Seedorf came in January. He got a couple of wins to start, but then things went back down south again. Easily knocked out this past week by Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. I think there needs to be some turnover in that squad if they're going to get back to certainly challenging Juventus for the Scudetto in the near future. It's a club with a very proud history, although I have remembered even in recent years when they've not necessarily been the strongest team in Italy, but they tend to have a tendency of making sure that they get back to the top and being competing amongst the very best in their own country as well as in Europe. There's just too much pride there for that club to overlook. The only thing to think about is will Clarence Seedorf be given the chance to rebuild that team and move it in the right direction with the pressure that he's under at the moment.
Well, I think it's similar to the Manchester United situation. It's a crisis moment right now, but long term, it's a blip on a stellar lifetime of soccer, and it's one of those things I look at and say, yeah, it's a problem right now, but they're the type of team that is going to improve, and it's just one of those years. We'll see AC Milan rebound, without a doubt.
Number 6, Wayne Rooney spoke this week about his desire and ambition to captain England. Is he worthy of national team captaincy?
Well, I think Wayne Rooney has learned a lot in his career, and personally, I don't think, though, he's national team captain material. He still has those moments of being a bit of a baby on the pitch, and I really think England needs somebody else in charge on the field and let Rooney concentrate on playing and scoring goals. I don't know if Rooney is that guy. I don't think Rooney is that guy to be the national team captain.
Thing is, I think based on his experience and the fact that there is a slow turnover of younger players coming into the England squad, he's going to be considered for the role. In terms of him being worthy, again, you're right. I think it's a question of his maturity on the pitch for both club and country going forward. If he starts showing a higher level of maturity and more responsibility of being a leader out there, then that might very well see him take the role on and maybe potentially even do a very good job.
Number 7 on the starting 11, what's the bigger match on Sunday? Manchester United versus Liverpool or Tottenham hosting Arsenal at White Hart Lane?
Based on the fact that they're competing for Champions League spots, it's got to be the North London derby, I think. And either way, I mean, both games are huge. I mean, you're talking about two of the most heated soccer rivalries here. But with what's at stake between Arsenal and Spurs at this moment in time, I think that game is probably just edges it a little bit. But having taken in a Liverpool-Manchester United derby a few years ago at Old Trafford, I can tell you that is as white hot as it can ever get. And all I can say is it's two excellent games for anybody to wake up here in Vancouver to watch, having a nice Sunday breakfast.
Well, I've been to the North London derby at White Hart Lane before, and I know what it's like. And yeah, Liverpool and Manchester United, they're bitter rivals, and it's kind of opposite in years past when Liverpool weren't exactly running up for anything, and this time it's United. They've kind of switched positions. So for me, it's that Spurs Arsenal match, and it's the one to watch. It's going to have the drama, especially after Tim Sherwood's comments after the Europa League match on Thursday. It has, like you said, Champions League implications. It potentially has some title implications as well. For me, that's the match to watch. That's the one that's going to be the big one on Sunday morning.
Number 8, Chivas won their first match last weekend against Chicago Fire. Are they a team that's for real?
Well, I think much like the Whitecaps, Chivas need to put together more than one game to be considered for real. They need to show consistent efforts and an ability to win. So for me, that's the type of thing that is going to be key for me to actually consider Chivas to be anything but a sort of one-hit wonder. I look at Chivas, and they've only been able to win back-to-back games 3 times since the start of the 2010 MLS season. So if they are a team that's on the rise and a team that is for real, as we put it, they're going to need to win tomorrow against the Whitecaps.
I would have to agree. They do, for me, offer something more than I think has been initially predicted. I think in some ways I still hold to the fact that, especially with a lot of the new signings they have, they will push whomever is potentially in 5th place or for 5th place in the West this year. So that puts them on basically on the playoff line. Vilmer Cabrera, for me, could very well be a Coach of the Year candidate if he does have a lot of success with his team. He does have a lot of experienced players to work with, from Kennedy in goal, Bocanegra and Burling at the back, Eric Avila's there, the talent of El Cubo Torres, and then he's got some very good new signings, Mauro Rosales and Andrew Baptiste. But the other guy I think should also look out for is a big solid kid from Clemson, their draft pick, Thomas McNamara, which they took in the first round of the first pick in the second round of this year's Super Draft. And they've got a lot of capabilities, but I agree. We need to almost see them perform tomorrow and show a level of consistency over the season if that's going to become a reality.
Number 9 on the starting 11. Can LA and Sporting Kansas City hang on to their 1-0 aggregate lead heading to Mexico for the second leg of their CONCACAF Champions League matches?
Going to be tough, especially when I watched, in the case of the KC game, Cruz Azul create a lot of chance to get an equalizer in that game. Same thing with Club Tijuana in the second half against LA when they were trailing, and then they could have easily come away. Both Mexican clubs could have come away with something from those first legs this week. I think KC's in a little bit more of a tougher time going to Mexico City and play in the Estadio Azul. They don't have as much Champions League experience, so for me it's a tougher prospect. I have more confidence in LA getting the job done because they do have that CCL experience. It's a short trip over the border. It will be an intimidating stadium. They're going to the Estadio Caliente to play in the second leg against Tijuana, but I think Galaxy can make it through and make the semis. The big issue is the match fitness and the fact that they're playing two clubs that are just past the midway point, or even the three-quarter point of their entire season, but the midway point of their Torneo Clausura. They've played 10 games each, and in the case of Cruz Azul, they're second in the standings right now. So match fitness is going to be a big factor here.
For me, no, it's not going to happen. Last week you said you thought that there was a good chance, and I said, I don't think so, and I still don't think it's going to happen. Yeah, they have leads going in, but I think those Mexican sides are just going to be too tough for the MLS sides to really overcome and defend those leads. So for me, not going to happen. The Mexican sides are going to go through.
Number 10, Clint Dempsey, Michael Bradley, both came back to MLS. Is there a Canadian worthy of bringing to MLS on big money?
You know what? This one I thought a lot about, and sadly, I don't think there is. I just can't really find somebody, a Canadian player that I'd really want to bring in. Josh Simpson was a guy that I was thinking of, but then, he's got the big injury. I've talked to him a number of times, and the mindset is there to be ready, but he said, really, it's up until I get on the field. Am I going to be able to actually play, get into that competition? So I'm not sure that I would even risk it for him at this point. And I just don't really think that there's one Canadian guy that you really want to bring in on big money right now. For me, that's sad, unfortunately, that there just isn't that one guy.
Feel really much the same way when I looked at this question this week, and the only player I can think of is Atiba Hutchison. He's got maybe the one player that, in terms of the clubs that he's played at and the competitions he's been in, that offers some amount of pedigree that an MLS club may be prepared to spend the money to go for, but he's pretty much the only one. As a side note, it would be nice to kind of see Vancouver's Marcus Haber come back to MLS at some point. He wouldn't come in, I don't think, on big money, but I look at him as being someone, as he's getting older and getting a little bit more experience, and depending on how well he does, obviously still playing in the lower divisions in England, if he'd be a useful depth striker for any MLS club in the near future.
Number 11, finally on the starting 11, is England and the Premier League losing its luster in European competition.
Well, I think they're going through a downturn, but it's important to remember that when you're looking at all the big leagues, all the big domestic leagues in Europe, they go through the cycle of kind of going through ups and downs, and obviously how clubs do in European club football is a big measuring stick of that. I see the Premier League clubs bouncing back in Europe in the not too distant future. It's obviously not going to be a great year this year, but that could easily be a totally different story a year from now. The Spanish and German, it's going to be either a Spanish or German club is going to win the Champions League this year for me. And right now, obviously Spain, Portugal, and Italy can say things are strong with them when they have 3 clubs each in the round of 16 of the Europa League.
For me, no, it's the same argument year in, year out, and England has won the tournament in Champions League. In the last 3 years, it's been 4 years since an Italian team has won it, so does that mean they only had one team in the round of 16, so does that mean that they've lost their luster? Well, no, people don't say that. Bayern Munich won it last year, but before that, it was more than 10 years ago before a German team had won it, so does that mean that they won it last year by fluke? It's, England has 4 teams in the round of 16. That's more than any other country. And next year, pretty sure they're still going to have 4 teams in the round of 16. So they haven't lost the luster. It's a hard tournament to win. For Champions League anyway, it's a hard tournament to win. And they haven't lost the luster. And quite frankly, who cares about the Europa League? I don't know if anybody does.
I'd say the clubs that are still in it and the supporters of those clubs would be.
Some of the supporters I don't think even care. That does it for the starting 11. We're going to get into a lot more of discussion about some of those topics as well as other ones with Colin Elms, the managing director of TSS Academy. That's during the Soccer Talk Roundtable in hour number 2. Vancouver Whitecaps, we touched on a couple things about that. They face Chivas Whitecaps due tomorrow at 4 o'clock. And after the break, Simon will give us the latest scores from around Major League Soccer. There's a few interesting score lines around MLS from earlier today. And we'll speak with Whitecaps assistant coach Martin Pert. When we return, we'll ask Martin about the team's decision to travel to LA a day earlier than normal. Over the last couple of years, on a West Coast trip, they would have traveled on Saturday down to LA, for example. But this year, they travel down on Friday. Is this something we'll see more and more with Coach Carl Robinson? We'll also ask Pert about how his new role as basically both assistant coach and translator is going for the Whitecaps. That's coming up next on Soccer Talk right here on AM 650. Whitecaps were 4-1 winners last week against the New York Red Bulls in front of a sellout crowd at BC Place. On Sunday, the Caps faced Chivas down at StubHub Center. Good evening. This is Soccer Talk here on AM 650. My name's Tyler Green. We'll hear from Whitecaps assistant coach Martin Pert in just a minute. And can the Caps be a better road team than they have been? But first, let's find out what has happened around the rest of Major League Soccer today with the MLS scoreboard. Here's Simon.
Well, it's an interesting day for Toronto FC, and especially for Jermaine Defoe. A 2-1 victory at Seattle Sounders, their first ever win in Seattle. And Defoe on his debut with both goals. Reds fans delighted to see that. Sebastien Letou, the former Vancouver striker, with the only goal in a 1-0 win over New England. The Revs are 0-2 to start the season, and that is Vancouver's opponent next weekend, their home opener down there at Gillette Stadium. New York Red Bulls won, Colorado Rapids won. Henry scored for New York, but was canceled out by Vicente Sanchez. Kansas City won. Dallas won. Houston beat Montreal by a 0-0. Will Bruin with his third goal of the year. And the best game of the night had to be the 3-3 draw between Salt Lake and San Jose. San Jose were 3-1 down, but needed two late goals from Victor Bernardes to win. The other game also on Sunday is Portland Timbers against Chicago Fire.
Yeah, and the Whitecaps playing 4 o'clock tomorrow against Chivas USA. And joining us on the program is Vancouver Whitecaps assistant coach Martin Pert. Martin, welcome to Soccer Talk for the first time.
Thank you very much.
As the first chance that we've had to speak with you, Martin, what drew your interest to work here in Vancouver with the Whitecaps?
Well, obviously, the first and foremost, it was Carl, and after the first couple of meetings that I had with Carl, then I was very interested in both him as a person and the way he was going to coach and manage, and also the style of play that he wanted to introduce with the team. Moving on from there was the growing respect of the MLS League, and also the city as well.
Now, obviously, we saw 4 goals last week for the Caps. Can fans expect more of that? You talked about a little bit of the new style that the Whitecaps are playing that drew you here. Can fans expect more of the same with maybe, or was that something of a little bit of unusual circumstances to see 4 goals go in?
Well, we'd like to think that we could score goals, and certainly we want to play entertaining and attacking football, and something to excite the fans and ourselves as well as coaches. That's the sort of football we want to play. Whether we get 4 goals every week, I'm not so quite so sure that we'll manage that, but we'll try.
Martin, now having had experience of coaching in so many different places, from the UK to the Middle East and yeah, I think even South America as well, how have you initially found so far what you've seen in North America, and in particularly with this league?
Well, it's very competitive. I'm watching the games today, and obviously last weekend, and watching the games from last weekend. We've watched 2 or 3 games today, and it's so competitive. The teams are so evenly matched. The way the league is structured, there's no. I find it refreshing in that you don't have for example, like in Manchester City, where they have a budget which is 5 or 6 times greater than yours, and therefore they have better players. So really competitive, and really enjoying that aspect of it.
Martin Pert joining us here on Soccer Talk here on AM 650. My name's Tyler Green. Alongside me, Simon Fudge. Martin, Pedro Morales is a guy that obviously a lot of people are excited about seeing. Came on as a sub last week, gets an assist and a goal. Is he ready to start tomorrow, and can we see him in a starting position tomorrow?
Well, the team's not named. Yet. Certainly, he's trained all week, and he's been good all week. And he's come off the back of half a season with Malaga in La Liga, so it's just a question of being careful with him, particularly because he's never played on turf before. So we're just being a little bit careful with him last week, and he's ready, and the team's not selected yet, so we'll have to wait to see tomorrow.
Well, one of the things that we've seen already now, just with the change of this year with Carl Robinson in charge, is just the new format of traveling. You guys traveled down the West Coast here to LA, where we find you on Friday. Normally over the last few years with the Whitecaps, it's been travel the day before a game. Is there something new that that Carl's trying to look at with traveling down that extra day?
I think it's a case by each match
Mm-hmm.
will decide on its merits. It's just the way the flights were. It came about. It was good to get down here and train on grass and get used to the weather, particularly this trip. So not all the trips will be like this, but so this trip, that's what we've looked to do.
What do you expect out of Chivas on Sunday?
Well, they won last week, so they're going to be buoyant from that. They're certainly a strong team, and they like to get balls into the box, and they've got their own sort of strengths. And I think it'll be a tough game, But at the same time, I think if we work hard and we stay to our game plan and play our style, then we'll have a chance to be competitive and to get something from the game.
Is there any one particular player that you really think that you need to worry about with Chivas tomorrow?
No, it's more the actual team approach. They like to get the ball and get crosses into the box. So it's a team effort on their part, and we'll have to be really ready for what they throw at us tomorrow.
You're listening to Soccer Talk here on AM 650. My name's Tyler Green. Alongside me, Simon Fudge. We're talking with Martin Pert, the assistant coach of the Vancouver Whitecaps here on AM 650.
Away games always bring that challenge if you're just out of the domain of playing in front of, say, your home fans and getting the energy that and the buzz from that. Have you guys, you and Carl, had to think of slightly different approaches in terms of getting the players to focus a little bit more in terms of the fact that they're going into a place that is not their home, that it's away, and is a little bit more challenging?
Well, it's certainly something that we're going to make the players aware of, and something that we have already, in that they're moving from a home, first game of the season at home. There's a full house, there's a great atmosphere, from our fans, and we're going to play in Chivas, which traditionally they don't have as they're one of the lowest crowds for the MLS, so the atmosphere won't be as great, and therefore you don't have the same sort of adrenaline kicking in. So you're going to have to find that motivation from inside, and it's certainly something we're going to look at as well and make the players aware of.
Final question from us here, Martin. How much Spanish versus English are you speaking these days? Is it 50-50? Is it,
The boys are trying. The boys are really, and when I'm talking about the boys, I'm talking about Pedro and Nico and Seba and Matty. They're trying with their English as well. I mean, obviously, it's their natural language is Spanish, but they're trying. And we're trying in English, and then if we have difficulty in English, then we can always flip back into Spanish and make sure they know and understand what they're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been pleased with them. Very, very pleased with their approach to the English as well.
Perfect. Well, Martin, good luck in the match tomorrow. All the best, and safe travels back to Vancouver.
No, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Martin Pert joining us here on Soccer Talk on AM 650. We thank Martin for his time, and the Whitecaps taking on Chivas USA tomorrow, 4 o'clock, and it leads into our poll question because the Vancouver Whitecaps had a great match last week against the New York Red Bulls. So tonight's poll question, the Barber poll, brought to you by anotherfinecut.com. After seeing the Whitecaps win their first match of the season, how do you think the Caps will fare in Major League Soccer? Variety of options: missing the playoffs. Are they going to squeak into the playoffs? Are they going to make the playoffs comfortably? Supporter Shield, MLS Cup. Are they going to win everything? You can vote. Just hashtag Barber poll and tweet us your comments and your thoughts. Soccer Talk 650 on Twitter or Tyler Green FC. You can also go to tylergreen.org to vote on this one. The Whitecaps won against New York last week, of course, and how do the players think about how they're going to fare next week? Well, we'll talk about that after the break. And we'll also get into the latest headlines from around the world, brought to you by Uniglobe One Travel. And like I said, we'll hear from some of those Whitecaps coaches and players. But a quick look before we do that at the Soccer Talk Fantasy Premier League It's brought to you by Umbro Canada. The scoreboard after Week 1 sees Ian McHugh and his St. Pauli Vancouver team sit atop the Soccer Talk Fantasy League standings presented by Umbro. 81 points for Ian in his first week of action. How is he going to follow that one up? Sub Hedgehog FC, led by Paul Sabaran Herzog, is in second spot. 75 points for Sub Hedgehog FC. Todd Paulus, Ronald Martin, and Derek Friedman round out the top 5, very close to the top 2 slots. Christina Dyke, who leads the Soccer Talk crew with her Van City Jack squad, she didn't have a great week, but she's still better than us. I'm in 40th spot with my team, which, if you know what my team name is, which I'll tell you, Mid-Table Green FC, it pretty much talks about how my team does. I am always a mid-level team in Fantasy League. I'm also ineligible to win any of the prizes, so that maybe has something to do with my motivation. Paul Dolan, who obviously is the big sponsor of this with his Umbro Reds, they currently sit 42nd spot. Mark Weber of the province, 55th. Simon Fudge. Now, I thought Simon wasn't even on the fantasy roster until I switched to the second page and realized he was in 58th spot. The Soccer Talk team, it was selected by Christina Dyke, our executive producer here, and I think she based a lot of it on looks and sex appeal. That's what she said. Well, she maybe didn't say that, but the Soccer Talk squad is 66. She claims, Simon, that she picked the team in order for the listeners to not come dead last.
Interesting.
But that hasn't helped AFTN Canada's Michael McCall, who was on our roundtable last week, and my buddy Kyle McDonald, because they were terrible. 64 spot.
Bit surprised, especially with Michael.
But there's still time to get involved. Head to our Facebook page, facebook.com/SoccerTalkVan, and you can find out all the details at the website. Like I said earlier, you don't need to, if you want to win the grand prize, yeah, you got to have the best point total. But each month we're going to give random prizes out. Currently for the month of March, it is the best team name. So if you come up with a pretty fantastic name before the end of March, hey, you might be the big winner, because we have thousands of dollars in prizes available for the Fantasy Premier League, courtesy of Umbro Canada, including tickets to the Canada versus Japan women's match. We have Canada jerseys. We have Umbro balls. We have Umbro scarves, some gear, etc. Umbro is the name worn by top players and teams worldwide. Those same uniforms are available for your team or club at umbro.com. Umbro, proud to be the official supplier of the Canadian men's and women's national teams, is celebrating 90 years of expertise in the game. If you want your club to play like the pros, dress them like the pros. Umbro.com. Umbro, the heart and soul of football. Next on Soccer Talk on AM 650, the thoughts of Caps head coach Carl Robinson, Nigel Reo-Coker, Russell Tybert, and Jordan Harvey. All that is next. Welcome back to the first half of Soccer Talk. My name's Tyler Green. This is AM 650 Radio in Vancouver, streaming around the world, am650radio.com. Thank you for listening. The first half is brought to you by BC Soccer. Whether you'd like to become a player, coach, or referee, visit bcsoccer.net to learn how to become more involved with the beautiful game. We'll check out some of the headlines that are making news around the globe, but first, a quick check of the English Premier League presented by Umbro. See the latest Umbro footwear, uniforms, and equipment at umbro.com. Umbro, the heart and soul of football. Simon?
8 games today in the English Premier League and some big results. Aston Villa beat Chelsea by a goal to nil through Fabian Delph goal, and Chelsea finished with 9 men as well after Willian and Ramirez were sent off. That allowed Manchester City to move to within 6 points of the Blues, a 2-0 win at Hull City. It was Everton 2, Cardiff 1. Fulham big win over Newcastle 1-0. Southampton 4, Norwich City 2. Stoke beat West Ham 3-1. It was Sunderland 0, Crystal Palace 0, and finally Swansea City fell to a 2 undefeated home to West Bromwich Albion. Super Sunday tomorrow, Manchester United against Liverpool and Spurs against Arsenal.
Thanks again, Simon. That was the English Premier League scoreboard brought to you by Umbro, online at umbro.com. In the second half of the program, we'll talk football issues with Colin Elms, who's with TSS Academy, tssacademy.com, plus the injury report with David Sandals of expertphysio.ca. And we'll do some key questions. Time now to hear from some of the principals in tomorrow's Whitecaps match against Chivas USA. And one of the topics that, keeps coming up, you asked Martin Pert about it, is whether this Vancouver team can actually win on the road, Simon. And it's been hit or miss over the last few years. We've seen good, bad, and ugly performances on the road. How do you think they're going to fare this year on the road? And I guess we'll find out more, obviously, tomorrow. But do you think this team has what it takes to be a better equipped side on the road?
I think they are a little bit better equipped because they have, especially through midfield and up front, the ability to counterattack teams. If they're well structured to absorb the pressure of their opponent when they're playing away from home, and then hit them on the break, especially with all the speed that they've got available to them. Then they could certainly play much better on the road. Thing is that would mean that they'll play with a different formation and maybe with a couple more of their speedier players. The likes of Maddox and Mane would probably be in one of those starting lineups, for example, if they're looking to try and hit teams on the break.
Yeah, and that's something that midfielder and Canadian international Russell Tybert talked about. He talked a little bit about those things of playing the same as they do home and away.
As we showed in the first game, we want to score goals. We want to make it exciting for ourselves. We want to make it exciting for the fans. We want to make it exciting atmosphere for everybody. I don't think that's going to change when we go on the road, especially, going down and play Chivas this weekend.
Jordan Harvey, defender, will get some more action in this Chivas game tomorrow. We would assume on Sunday. Probably not going to be many, if any, changes to that starting 11. But Jordan Harvey talked about how this team is going to play, especially on the road against Chivas.
We're going to try to play every game the same, whether it's on the road or at home. Try to keep possession and kind of build on what we've started.
So there it is. It is that philosophy, Simon, that's similar. Hey, we're going to play like we do at home as we do on the road. And that's something that the Whitecaps have kind of talked about in the past. But this year, I think with Carl Robinson, it's actually something they're going to do. This is the formation they're going with. This is how we're going to play. And I like that because, and it's a great example of big teams, but a Manchester United doesn't walk into a West Ham and say, oh, we're playing here in West Ham and in London. We're not going to change the way we're playing. We're going to play how we play. The LA Galaxy, in Major League Soccer, they're not a team that goes up to Vancouver and says, we're going to change the way we play. They go, hey, we were the MLS Cup champions. We're going to play the Galaxy way. You want to beat us? You have to beat us playing our way.
And I think that's got to be the approach that Vancouver need to take. And if they do so, I think chances are they could very well go out and set the best away record that they've ever had in MLS. I also think with the game tomorrow at StubHub Center, with the width and the length of the pitch, particularly the way they like to get the fullbacks attacking down those flanks, the fact that they've got a lot of space to work with on that pitch, it's a place where I've always thought Vancouver could always do well, and that they haven't in terms of results, but in terms of how big of a field they're playing on, it almost suits particularly the way they want to play this season very well, so I'd expect them to use it to their advantage.
Now, you mentioned the possibility of setting an away road record here for the Whitecaps in terms of franchise history. I just got to say that's not going to be hard to do. They haven't exactly lit it up on the road, so I think they have a very good chance to do that this year. Carl Robinson talked earlier this week and talked about playing on the road and really having to put their stamp on the game.
If we put our game plan into effect and stamp our authority on the game, then they'll have problems coping with us as well.
And Carl Robinson also talked about a little bit about this Chivas USA side.
It's one game of football, and it's important. We go from a sellout at BC Place where it's full, and we've got our fans to a stadium that's probably got a few thousand. So it's going to be a different mindset for us going into the game, but as an equally important game. So we'll have to get our focus right, but we'll be ready.
And that's something else that the Whitecaps kind of have to their advantage in terms of there's probably not going to be a lot of fans down there in the StubHub Center. Chivas doesn't draw exceptionally well, and so that they can play that to advantage. It's not as a hostile an environment as, say, going down to Seattle in their second week, or going down to Portland, or even having to travel across country to a Toronto or a Montreal. Chivas, they kind of lucked out with the Chivas side that, maybe on the field is a little bit of an unknown, but you do know what you're going to get in terms of the atmosphere there.
And I do remember back 2 years ago when their second game of the season was away to Chivas, and they claimed a winner through demerit. And I think you're right. I think in some ways it's interesting that they've got a chance here to just get focused on what they want to do. And they're actually going to be, as you say, in a stadium where they won't have a huge number of distractions that could take away from that focus. So they basically take something very positive from what they built last week, apply it to what they want to do tomorrow, and try and go get another three points.
Nigel Rio-Coker, the final Whitecap that we'll hear from, he talked about a lot of the intangibles that this Whitecaps team possesses.
I think the most important thing in anything in football is having a good team spirit, good camaraderie, and that's what we seem to have in this dressing room at the moment. We've got a great strength of characters, but we're a team. We're united as one, and our performance from the first weekend shows that. And if we can take that spirit into travelling, whether we're here or away from home, we should be fine. We shouldn't have no problems.
And we see that a lot. You see that a lot on a lot of these social media. Whether it's Twitter, whether it's Instagram, if you follow any of the players, they do like to take the piss out of one another. And we've kind of seen that over the last few weeks. And you do see that there is that bit of camaraderie with this team, and they seem to get along, and everyone's seems to be rooting on one another in these games. And it does, you can notice that with this team this year.
Yeah, and I would say that Carl Robinson should probably be given some credit for probably right at the beginning of preseason establishing what that atmosphere was going to be like and how he wanted everybody to probably buy in. And as soon as they were able to do the fact that a lot of the returning players were very keen to have him back as a coach was one thing, and then to introduce some players, the new faces that allowed a lot of the returning guys to look around and say, that guy's a very talented player, and say, we've got a chance of really doing something this season. I think you can see that there's a lot of energy in the group right now, and that's a really positive thing to see.
Time now to find out some of the headlines from around the globe with Uniglobe One Travel, taking a look at the news, notes, and rumors from around the globe. Call Neil at Uniglobe One Travel, 604-677-1495. I'll give that number to you in a second again. Let's check in on some of the headlines from around the globe. The Daily Mirror reports that Manchester United set to offer David De Gea a new deal to see off interest from Real Madrid. According to The Sun, Sam Allardyce has warned West Ham players that no one gets a new contract until the Hammers have confirmed their Premier League survival. And the Daily Express, another Manchester United one, has given a boost in their pursuit of Bayern midfielder Toni Kroos, with the news that Real Madrid have cooled their interest in the 24-year-old German international. That was headlines from around the globe with Uniglobe One Travel. Fast, simple, and easy. Neil and the team at Uniglobe One Travel have you covered. Whether it's a simple trip down the I-5 to Seattle or Portland, a cruise ship experience, or heading overseas to Europe, Neil and the crew at Uniglobe One Travel have you covered. Call Neil, the number again, 604-677-1495. That's 604-677-1495. And I'd like to give a big Soccer Talk welcome to Kia Vancouver, online at kiavancouver.com. Buy any new 2013 or 2014 new in-stock Kia and receive 0% financing and a 5-year, 1,000-kilometer bumper-to-bumper warranty, as well as a Kia Vancouver exclusive Spring Savings New Car Buyer's Package. The total value is over $2,500. Absolutely no charge to you, the customer. Offer expires this Thursday, March 20th. Do not miss out. Details in store at Kia Vancouver, 396 Southwest Marine Drive. Online, kiavancouver.com. The second half of Soccer Talk on AM 650 tonight features TSS Academy Managing Director and co-founder Colin Elms and expert physios David Sandals in just a few minutes. He's going to talk about Omar Salgado's foot injury and how that's going to affect Omar Salgado during the season. But first, let's find out a little bit more on as we profile George Cope in tonight's BC Soccer Profile.
Time now for the BC Soccer Profile, showcasing special achievements and success stories from throughout the province. Graham Cope, president of the Kamloops Youth Soccer Association, was presented the President Award for Soccer at the Sport BC Athlete of the Year Awards. The award is a huge honor for Cope, who has shown his leadership skills and dedication to soccer in British Columbia. Cope has been president of the Kamloops Youth Soccer Association for the past 7 years and has brought many prestigious soccer events to the Kamloops area. He has also helped to bring the BC Soccer Premier League to the interior of BC. George Cope, award recipient, committed to building and developing soccer within his community. If you'd like to learn more about Cope's award and to become more involved with soccer in your community, visit bcsoccer.net.